Today on UVA Legends podcast, I have guard Doug Smith, class of '93, guy I played pickup with, and really good guy, really good player. And one of his distinctions is, I believe, he played the most games in a UVA uniform without starting. Is that true, Doug?
That is true. Doug Dowdy, who used to cover us, still covers Virginia sports somewhat. He actually a couple of years ago reached out to me, and he told me that was my distinction. I was like, I guess I'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it. I mean, you're in the record book, man.
Yeah, that was one of the things. I don't know if you know, your senior day, you always get a chance to start. At least we used to. I think Tony Bennett doesn't do that now. But Jeff Jones, like you're starting your senior day. I'm like, no, like I should have started already in my mind. I'm not starting for that one. Plus, more so, we were going on a nice run, and our team came together at the end of the year. And I'm like, why would we mess this up? Let's just, I'm fine.
My son's soccer team had senior night, and it was a game between two of the top 10 teams in the country. So the seniors got like 4 minutes,
Wow.
Because, it was one of those games where they couldn't afford a early goal. Yeah. But look, as we were saying before, you're usually on the other side of these things. You guys got a wonderful podcast, Locker Room Access. It's especially great during the basketball season. One of your teammates, Chris Havlicek, son of John Havlicek, and a few others are on it. So this is a little bit different. But, I was thinking there's so many UVA basketball players that are really good on the air. There's Dan Bonner, who's been ESPN. I think he's done NCAA, maybe even NBA at some point.
He did our games back in the day.
Yeah, he's great. Obviously Jimmy Miller does a great job on the radio. TJ on the radio is great, and also he's a funny podcaster. Your brother from another mother teammate, TJ. But this junior's great. Cory. What is it about all these UVA grads that make you guys so good on air? Man,
that's such a great point, and I think we all have really good personalities. And one thing about our team back then, a lot of teams, you're 20 years old, you're kind of like on TV and you're somewhat famous in your state or whatever. We never really took ourselves seriously. Mm-hmm. I mean, Ted Jeffries and Chris Havlicek together are two of the funniest guys you'll ever be around. Yeah. You can't get a word in. Wow. Cory's funny. My gripe with Cory is all his jokes on air stem from me and Chris Havlicek.
Oh, okay.
It's all our personalities. I'm kidding, but Cory's he's the hardest working guy I know right now. He's on the radio, he's on TV, he's NBA, he's ESPN, he's college. Yeah. But I think it's just we don't take ourselves so seriously, and Virginia's got some smart dudes, man. A terrible word, but articulate. Use the vocabulary and see things a little differently, and there's a certain confidence too. Our coaches, I play for Coach Holland and Jeff Jones and a bunch of assistants, Dennis Wolf, Brian Ellerby, Tom Perrin, Craig Littlepage. They treated us like, developing men. We didn't have a lot of rules. We didn't have a lot of can't eat this, can't do that. The only rule we had was after our session pregame, before the night before the game, you had to go home. You couldn't go out. We were encouraged to go to parties. We were encouraged to be with the students. And I think a lot of that shows, man. It's a great point you make. I hadn't even considered that.
Well, one thing that's awesome for ex-athletes as well is media is more accessible now. It used to be to get a job in media, you have to do it like Dan Bonner. You have to, get a job with a major outlet and be lucky enough and talented enough to get yourself in front of a lot of people. Now, through the internet and other, podcasts and other types of mediums, there's ways to get your message out there and to show your personality.
Absolutely, and I'm sure there's a lot of politics to it. I know Cory went through a bunch with his ESPN stuff, and I have a good friend, Kyle Martino, another guy. If you know Kyle from the soccer world,
yeah,
the NBC soccer games of the week or whatever for the European stuff. And Kyle's fantastic. And so I said, Kyle, Cory's trying to get an ESPN, just, hook him up. And he's like, it doesn't work like that. I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't work like that? And so, Cory's, he had a long road, but he's obviously the most forefront of us now.
Yeah. Well, you talked a little bit about how you guys got along and how you guys had fun. It was kind of a fun-loving crew. As you know, I talked to Jeff Jones and to Bryant recently, and they were so wonderfully accessible to me. Great dudes. And they both said amazing things about each other. And so, very soon after, and Bryant is the assistant coach for Jeff at Old Dominion, at least he was, it was announced that he was going to UNC Greensboro. Did that surprise you? Obviously, I don't want you to reveal anything, that you don't feel comfortable.
Yeah, I'll reveal what I know. It absolutely surprised me. In fact, I it's a funny thing that I organize a party at Jeff Jones' house every year for our team. And anywhere from 20 to 40 of us will go down to Norfolk. Long story short, my kid's mom got COVID the day before, so I couldn't go. And it happened bang, bang, where I think Bryant took a new position at UNCG, and our party was Saturday, and maybe it happened on a Thursday. So everybody kind of came, and it was the proverbial elephant in the room, so to speak. I didn't get to go. I think Bryant's been there a while. His kids have graduated, and I think all of his kids are out of college at this point, working, law school, different things. And maybe he just wanted to change it up. You know, he absolutely wants to become a head coach, and maybe he thought a different path would be the way to do it. And you know, we talked about it and open about it. He's just doing something different, man.
Yes, it seemed to me, you know, without knowing anything, and I often talk without knowing anything, is that he was in a perfect position to get that job, because Brian, one thing Jeff had said is, dude, I can't do this for much longer. It's a grind, and it's getting more and more difficult to have this lifestyle, and you know, as we get older. So.
Yeah, and then, you know, Wood Sealy was a guy. He was in the sport information department when I played.
Mm-hmm.
What a awesome guy. Really, really. You know, you don't realize it when you're 20 and the guy's in sport SID or whatever, but he's extremely bright. But he's the athletic director at ODU. So I think it just seemed like it would be seamless with whenever Jeff was Coach Jones, JJ had enough, he'd move on, and then Bryant would slip in. I think they got a new president, so maybe that changed things a little bit from Bryant's perspective, and he went a different direction, man.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows how I feel about Bryant Stith in every way, so the guy's my idol.
But to be honest with you, and to be fair, I don't think anyone has ever said anything bad about Bryant Stith. I mean, he's one of these guys that everybody loves. I mean, he's like, he works hard, he's talented, he's humble. I mean, all the things that you like and admire in someone, he's got them all.
You know what Bryant used to do before games on the road? Him and Anthony Oliver, best of friends, same year. They were always a join with me and Chris Havlicek on road trips. Mm-hmm. And me and Chris are in there bouncing around, being crazy, whatever. We go in, and Bryant and Anthony are ironing their own shirts before the games. That's an old school, like, Southern thing too. But it was just, I mean, I can't think of anything bad to say about Bryant. Nothing. Maybe one time he didn't pass to me when I thought I was open, but he probably made the shot and got fouled. So what can I say?
That's a Southern thing, guys, and took care of the clothes, because you know you appreciated those things. You didn't take it for granted. So it's definitely an old school.
And your mom taught you to, and she wasn't doing it for you.
Oh, exactly right. Well, let's talk a little bit about UVA basketball. Let's talk about the current team. Again, you do a great job covering it. One thing this team has in common with you is you probably have one of the best records in UVA history in playing against Duke. I believe you had a winning record against Duke as a player. It's close there, which I don't think there's that. Right. Yeah, I don't think that many players after 1983 or 4 could probably say that, but you definitely could. This team beat Duke on the road last year. They had some very nice moments, but you know, obviously, it was a disappointing year. They didn't get to the tournament. What are your thoughts on last year's season? What's going on in the off season, and what do you think for this season coming up?
I mean, we sit here and we watch all the games together. Me and Mark Jerome, Havlicek, TW, and I know it way too much probably at this point for my liking. I usually just go enjoy it and win, lose, whatever, win, of course. You know, the whole guard situation's tricky with Kihei being there, opting for his 5th year, and then, you know, Reese is just right there where he's going to take over. Reese Beekman, who everybody knows how much I like him. Mm-hmm. You know, the other parts were kind of hit or miss. Poppy had some really, really bright moments and some really down moments. And, you know, Caden's coming into his own. He's still so young. I feel like he's been there for 10 years, but I think he's got 2 or 3 years left. And, you know, there's kind of a log jam at the wings. People want to see Tane come and play, and people want to see Igor all the time. But, you know, Coach Bennett, man, he's there for a reason. And, you know, my good friend, brother, Jason Williford on staff, Coach O, Kyle Getter, these guys, they're in practice with him every day, man. They know what's their best chance to win the game. You know, they're not there to make us happy as fans and to entertain us, especially Tony. I think he's all about building, winning, etc. I'm really excited for this year. You know, I think Armin's going to turn the corner, shooting the ball. You got Jaden and the transfer, of course, BVP, which we're trying to think of a good Vanderplas nickname, which I'll leave that to Havlicek. But every time I think about the team now, I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about Jaden. Oh shit, I forgot about so and so. It's like there's so many guys and so much to be excited about. And so the locker room access thing, the biggest component of it is that we have a guy who's got next, who is the recruiting guru. I don't know if you follow this.
Yeah.
Julian, I had no idea how much fans are into the recruiting. All our time, I'm like, all right, let's see who we get. All these new guys, cool. You're Wahoo, you're us now. But we never knew who they were coming in. Now I'm involved here in Jersey City. There's so much talent around, and we're recruiting a couple of the kids from my son's high school. He just graduated, but some really talented guys I like a lot, good families and stuff. So it's fun.
Yeah. Well, when you look at Tony Bennett and you think about your style of play, how do you think you would have done playing for Tony Bennett? And generally, how do you think you would have played in today's game? To me, there's nothing about your game. Well, it doesn't. Yeah. There's nothing about your game that doesn't agree with today's game. You're a great outside shooter. I think guard play is actually even more at a premium now. I mean, you were definitely during the time when the three-pointer was being embraced into the game, yep. but not to the extent it is now. How do you think you would have done today, and how do you think you would have played for Coach Bennett? Every
time I go back to JPJ, and a couple of times I've brought friends, and Coach Bennett's been incredibly gracious. Greatest thing he ever did was hire Jason Williford for me, in my mind. So I go to JPJ, I'm like, Jason, with my friends talking shit, I'm like, would I play today like the way I was in 1993? He throws me a basketball on the court, says shoot a three. Thank goodness I made it. This one time we had 10 people in there. I made the three. I'm like 42 years old. He goes, Fresh, you would play.
Yeah.
People talk about the pack line. Like, you remember our teams. We essentially we didn't call it the pack line. Now, we didn't do some of the things like they double the posts and they did, but we were in a stance. We were in passing lanes. We were cheating it a little bit and, knowing when to go, when not to go. Cherokee Parks got in the post. You went and, you sneaked and doubled and then got back to Bobby or whatever it was. But we played tough defense. I think for me, I was developed growing up. I had an extremely fundamental high school coach, and I went to a bunch of camps, and it was all from Don Meyer, David Lipscomb, whole longer story. And we really knew the fundamentals of defense, helping recover, closing out. Also, as a guard, it would have been pretty easy for me, I think, to play. Now, the difference now, the athleticism and the length has changed a lot. But, if I could have hit the three and moved around, I would have been all right, got some time.
So when you mentioned the pack line, isn't it a different time? I mean, the thing about the pack line is so unique, I guess, is you don't necessarily, I guess it's the way you help and the way you recover. Back when you played, unless you were guarding, face guard all over the floor, a pack line was a more typical way of playing defense because you didn't guard every single pass, you didn't look at every single pass as a potential three-pointer to beat you. You just
right.
We guarded differently back then, didn't we?
Well, you sort of counted on guys to miss, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Guys I think maybe Ty Jerome made this. You have to choose. You have to choose certain guys. You have to choose. Let's say you're guarding Grant Hill. You're either taking away his shot or you're giving him a drive, or you can't really do anything, to be honest with you, because he's a pro. But that's how college was. All right, if I'm guarding Randolph Childress for a couple of minutes, I'm getting out to his three. If he gets around me, I got help. I got Ted Jeffries, So we were a lot of, we call it help and recover, I think is what we called it back then.
Yeah.
Pack line, I think Tony puts a lot of pressure on the guards not to get beaten, because I think that's the way that it can get broken down. Well, the biggest thing that sticks out to me, Julian, I went back to a game and Akeel Mitchell was the big guy. Now, nothing special height-wise, whatever, but I'm noticing this guy in the post. He's guarding three people in one possession. Yeah. So he goes and helps somebody 7-footer for Carolina, gets it. He comes from his guy. He helps out. The guy kicks it back. He goes and checks this guy, goes here, he goes and checks it. And he's suffocated three guys in 2 passes. And I never pay attention to big guys. I'm a guard, right? So I'm watching, what the guards are doing. But guys like he made me just watch him the entire game. It never happened. And Darius Atkins after him, and the high hard hedging, what do they call it? The hard hedge to half court and these things. It's a lot of continuousness, as Coach Bennett calls it. You gotta stay with it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about Tennessee. Now, I haven't talked to any players that were raised in Tennessee. So I don't know much about the culture. I know in East Tennessee, at the Appalachian area, those are pretty basketball crazy areas, right? Science Hill and all those like towns there, Gate City and Virginia City. It's a basketball area, as in all the Appalachian areas where the schools sometimes weren't big enough to have big football programs. So basketball was very big in that part of the world generally. But then in Tennessee, I know you have the western part of Tennessee where Memphis is. It's very urban. You've always had a lot of great athletes that part. But my guess is Tennessee is basically a football state. It's not quite Kentucky or Indiana in terms of basketball.
You kind of nailed it. Tennessee, there's 3 stars: East Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, where I'm from, and West Tennessee. And they're all very different. I mean, Memphis is basketball. But you'll get a lot of athletes. You'll get football players too. Where I'm from, Southern Middle Tennessee, 2 hours south of Nashville, it's a bunch of towns of, say, 7,000 people, counties of 30 to 50. Everybody in the county goes to the same high school. And there's something in the football water down there, because my hometown, again, 7,000 people, I think we've had 14 guys that play in the NFL, whether it's practice team. Kelly Holcomb played 12 years as a backup. Hightower for the Patriots is from the town next to me. But just a bunch of guys, and it's all football. And, you had the big white kids from the county that were the linemen. And then you had, the black dudes with the athletes that played every sport that were kind of the skill position. We had Ricky Blake, a running back, played with Troy Aikman for a while with the Cowboys. His brother, Eddie Blake, John Gamble, my weight coach at Virginia, had him at Auburn. He said he was the most talented lineman he'd ever seen, but he smoked too many cigarettes. But it's something about it. When I moved there, I moved from Georgetown, Kentucky. And so I grew up in Chicago and a bunch of places. Long story short, I played baseball and kind of threw the football with my dad and stuff like that. Never touched the basketball. I get to Kentucky, 10 minutes from Lexington, University of Kentucky. Everybody can play basketball. So I signed up for a team, and the famous line from my mom to my dad was like, Al, you need to go home and work with Doug. He needs to work on his basketball, but I can do everything else. I just never played. And so within 2 years, I'm making the all-star teams and that. And then I go to Tennessee in 5th grade, and it's all about football again, but I love basketball. And, there's a thing about, especially back then, Julian, the culture part of basketball, you're starting to have like Run DMC and other things. It was just cool, and it was cooler. And I think I was a little bit of a leader kind of at that age with kids, and always at the park and always playing with the bigger guys, going into the quote unquote hood and playing when very accepted, and I kind of looked up to Magic Johnson. Obviously I was going to be just like him at 6'1", 6'1", and he's 6'9". And then the kind of the Big East, I watched a lot of the Big East. I love Sherman Douglas and that stuff. So my town turned into a really high profile basketball town, and our football team was still good, but we stopped mixing. They used to mix more, and it took away from the basketball.
Yeah, I went to summer camp with Sherman Douglas. I knew him at a very young age. So why did your parents move to Southern Tennessee, and where were your parents?
Well, I was born in Monticello, Illinois. Moved to Decatur. We moved to Kansas. We moved to Chicago, Kentucky, and then Tennessee, age 12. My dad was always it's called a plant manager of like a big corporation that built things like copper wire and different things. And as they moved and as he took different jobs, that's just kind of how it worked.
Right. And are you are they all Tennessee fans there? I know you're close to Huntsville, Alabama.
Yeah, we're 10 minutes from the Alabama border. When I grew up, you chose either Alabama or Tennessee, and it was all football.
All football.
Nobody. I mean, I was a Kentucky fan because I grew up in Georgetown, near Lexington, so I was a Kentucky basketball fan. But when it came to footballs, then it was basically right down the middle, just like you see it. And then he had an occasional throwaway that liked Auburn, but they were just kind of weird, so that didn't really count. And I grew up like in Alabama. I don't even remember many of the players back in the early 80s, but I like them more. The Tennessee fans are, nobody even goes to the colleges. It's not because me and you went to Virginia, we're Virginia fans. Mm-hmm. They just pick a team, and that's how it is.
Were you able to find a high level like travel program in basketball and coaching?
Yeah, my dad was always my coach growing up. Always wanted to be, and not just for me, Julian, but for the other kids around too. He was really liked helping kids. He liked the coaching. So until junior high, he was a coach. Long story short, in 6th grade or 7th grade, there was something called the Amateur Athletic Union, AAU. And my dad and another guy, rest in peace, Mr. Alder, they figured out how to apply and get a team in it for us, right? And now we're like, wait, so I can play with the guys from Central, from here, from Highland Rim. And so all these great players in my mind will be on the same team now. I'm like, oh, we're going to win nationals. So the first game we played a team from Memphis, and they, this is like, we're 12 years old and there's like a 6'8" guy and a 6'9" guy. And I'm like, uh-oh. we better work on our game. I ended up, from there, Julian, I ended up playing on the Memphis Rebels because I played really well. The coach liked me. And so I started having this affinity and this connection with Memphis and playing with these guys. My teammate, great player, Quincy Vance, played at Middle Tennessee State University, way under the radar recruit. He just dominated his last 2 years in high school. Mm-hmm. And me and him would play on this team in Memphis every, AAU season. Then by the end of it, I was playing on a team in Nashville. Yeah. But, playing against Anthony Hardaway and different guys like that. Billy Smith, if you remember Billy.
Yeah. Incredible. You're playing with Anthony Hardaway or against him?
Against him. My claim to fame, I'm 2-1 all time against Anthony. He's 2 years younger. Yeah. My high school team beat him in a big tournament. I beat him again in AAU, and he was looking at me cross-eyed. Then we had him in the finals, and he was like, "That's enough, Fresh. That's it." And he just went off. So
you were kind of fortunate that you were close enough to Nashville to be near, or at least some population centers that you can play AAU. Because I would have thought without AAU, you probably wouldn't have gotten a lot of exposure, and you wouldn't have access to the kind of competition that you would need to develop as a
I mean, if I had grown up in Memphis, I think I would have been a lot different player, mm-hmm. and I'd probably be a rapper anyway, so it probably wouldn't matter. But
D-Fresh Smith.
Yeah, D-Fresh Smith. Yeah. The D-Fresh too. But a big defining thing on my basketball life, so to speak, was David Lipscomb College. It was a Church of Christ school. We went to Church of Christ, but my buddy went to basketball camp there, 12 years old. So I'm like, I love basketball. So I went with him. There's a legendary coach, Don Meyer. Everybody should look up. He's a Jimmy V award winner. Later in his career, cancer, the whole thing. But he was a guy, John Wooden was coming to camp. Bobby Knight was coming to camp. Dick Bennett was coming to camp to watch while we're all learning. And his son, I'm good friends with Jerry Myers. He runs recruiting at 247 Sports or whatever. Great high school player. So people don't realize, David Lipscomb College at the time, John Pierce played AAU with me, all-time leading scorer in college basketball history. Jerry Meyer, all-time leading assist in college basketball history. Now, they were NAIA, so it doesn't always show up. I mean, Pat Summitt, they were like this. So I had those influences that, I needed to be a fundamental player, so to speak, right? Even though I did have a little shake to me.
So remind me what your high school's name was. And I know you played for Coach name Kyle Bills. Tell us a little bit about Kyle Bills.
Oh, great. Yeah, Lincoln County High School in Fayetteville, Tennessee. It was AAA. I don't know. I've heard you guys talk about the sections in Virginia, but so single A small, double A medium, AAA big, mm-hmm. and those all played state tournament, not against each other, but in their division, so to speak.
Right.
Kyle Bills moved to Fayetteville when I was probably in 7th grade, and we had athletes, Anthony Shelton, Benny Jennings, pro football players that they could hoop too, older than me. And he turned that whole thing into people wanted to play basketball, man. And Kyle Bills, rest in peace. I was so lucky to get to see him with my twins, 2020. And he's had health stuff and he finally passed. But as sharp as ever up here, man, those practices were the hardest thing I've ever done. Like we came in every day and we just killed him. Our assistant coach, Alvin Palmer, football guy. Imagine that. So Coach Bills is smart enough to get Alvin Palmer. And Alvin was the guy that everybody loved. Mm-hmm. But when it's time for practice, Coach P is killing you. And the box out drills. And so we kind of combined a little bit. And I mean, we had really, really, really good teams. People didn't want to see us.
Was he a good tactician, Coach Bills?
He was extremely prepared. We played a pack line kind of defense, but we'd jump and run, we'd press you. We had a lot of athletes, a lot of kind of interchangeable guys that were kind of like the same, 6'2", fast and quick, could jump and run, and not unbelievable basketball skills, but just and worked hard. But we ran. We had the secondary break. We'd run up the side. Coach Jones and even Bryant Stith make fun of me. They mess with me to this day in my long chest passes because I'd get it and just instinctively go. And we beat people down, man. We had some nice teams, surprise teams, and had some athletes.
So what was the environment at high school games? I'm sure the football games, you had packed stadiums. But
Man, the Friday Night Lights thing is unbelievable. I quit playing football in 9th grade because I figured out it hurt.
Mhm.
You know, I could play basketball physically, but I could, you know, control it, so to speak. And then in football, you're running around, you're just getting smashed and, you know, pile on. So our Friday nights, 10,000 people easily at the football games, the band coming in. My sister's junior year, their team had 7 pros, and they were ranked number 5 in the nation, unscored on through like the last game or something. It was an insane show. My high school teams were really good. Love that. So then basketball, if you won, they come. And we started winning. You know, you in the beginning to be like sparse. By the end of it, our gym was probably 3,000 to 5,000 people.
Wow, it's a big gym.
And then we had these rivalries, right? Like I said, so, you know, 30 minutes away is a place called Shelbyville, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
The Walking Horse place or whatever. And their women's team at the time was number 1 in the country. And they never lost. And so they traveled big for their women. And then we developed a huge rivalry with their men's teams. Kid Fishback was really good. Chris Brown, Todd Bone, and hated each other.
Yeah.
And they were kind of like the little brothers because I had Quincy still. He's a year older than me. And they'd always get there. They'd get close. They couldn't get us. My senior year, we go down there. They still have their whole team. We're sort of coming together as a team. They beat us beat us at home. They beat us at home. Then the district finals, we beat them. Region finals, we beat them. So it was, you know, you just saw those guys always in heads in their towels, and I loved it. But I got to be friends with all of them.
So you got to go to the state tournament then as a player.
So in Tennessee, if you win the region, you go to something called the sub-state.
Okay.
And if you win the sub-state, you go to Nashville, to Vanderbilt, to the state. So my junior year, we won the sub-state, played a team from Cleveland, Tennessee, which is essentially Chattanooga. They had a 6'7", 6'8" point guard named Darnell Mee. Incredibly athletic, great player, very Anthony Hardaway-esque. You know, kind of like a poor man's Anthony Hardaway, for what that's worth. Ended up playing with Bryant Stith for the Denver Nuggets, Darnell. Played at Murray State. So that year, my junior year, we were on a roll. We're just killing people. And they come to our gym, and we beat them by like 38. And, you know, we're practicing for it. We're looking at like, oh, this is going to be rough. Like, this is not going to be, and we just blew them out. We go to the state tournament. We're doing too good, Julian. We're up by 19 in the third quarter. Kevin Anglin in Franklin, Tennessee. Kevin played for Vanderbilt and a couple other guys. All of a sudden, threes. They were just killing us. And then we somehow lost, which is, I can't believe to this day. Up by 19, you got to shut that down.
So you still think about that game?
Oh yeah, you know, it's a weird thing. Like the only thing in that game I remember is Quincy had 2 fouls and he went for a rebound. I saw the guy come under him. I was like, oh no, it's going to be his 3rd or 4th or whatever it was. He's going to come out of the game. We don't need that. He was on such a roll. I think about, you know, my last game at Virginia, man, Cincinnati. I watch it all the time. Kills me.
So when did you start getting interest in college, and when did UVA get on your radar?
Yeah, my recruiting story is kind of interesting. I was always interested in college. Always wanted to play. You know, when I was a kid, I was like, all right, Mom, if I can't be a pro basketball player, I'm going to be a pro baseball player. And if I can't do that, and I got to like tennis, and I got to like golf, like I'm going to play. So once I decided 9th grade basketball, I was all about it. Recruiting kind of was slow for me. I wasn't a big scorer because our teams were really good. You know, we wanted to win games, and that's kind of how we were set up. So I didn't shoot a ton, which I regret to this day, especially with the 3, because I could shoot. And my senior year, so to give you perspective, I'm the same year as Bobby Hurley, Kenny Anderson, Nick Van Exel, Sean Golden, if you remember him. There's
Mr. Jennings.
Mr. Jennings, he's 2 years older than me.
Oh, he's over. Okay, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, he's Tennessee State. Coach Les Robinson came to my house, and he saw us practice. He goes, Doug, we love you. We love you. He goes, please don't come to East Tennessee. I'm like, why not? He's like, we have a guy named Mr. Jennings. He's like, I don't think you're going to play for 2 years. I was like, all right, that's fair. So I got all interested in Keith. I knew about Keith. So that my year, you know, everybody waited for Kenny Anderson, right? And Bobby was Duke already, I think. Waited for Kenny. Kenny went to Georgia Tech. Then boom, 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 boom. We went and played in Memphis, as I told you, in Christmas. And so everybody signed early. Vanderbilt was on me really hard early. They saw CM Newton was the coach. They saw me in an AAU game, and I threw a behind the back pass to Amos Gregory, full length court for a dunk. And the assistant reported back, we're not recruiting him anymore because of the past. And Julian was on the money. His staff was average age of like 80, it felt like. But I was there at football games my sophomore year. They recruited me. And Stanford was big, all the service academies, a little bit of Ivy League. But Stanford came and watched me, and they ended up offering a guy from Washington State. And I can't remember his name, but really good point guard. And we played them later in college. And I basically was kind of like, quote unquote, undrafted in terms of an early signee. Come to spring, and I'm playing AAU and everything, and I'm, as they call it now, blowing up. I'm getting calls from everywhere in the country. Everybody that needed a point guard, essentially. Does that make sense? And, you know, Purdue comes in, and then Eddie Fogler got the job at Vanderbilt. He calls me in Fayetteville. He's like, Doug, you're right in our backyard. Like, what's going on? He had that Carolina connection. I used to go to camp in Carolina. He's like, can you just get up here and, like, you know, get this done or whatever? I'm like, sorry, man. They blew it, coach. Like, and you know, my mentor, Ray, Mr. Fraley, I'd be remiss not to mention him. I'll tell you a funny story about him in a minute if we have time. He was really active, and he had a lot of connections. He's a Carolina guy. And I'm pretty sure he's the guy that said to Coach Odom and Jeff Jones, you need to come and watch my guy, Doug Bones. He called me Bones. And finally, they were in the tournament in Nashville, where they played Middle Tennessee State. My buddy Quincy's on that team. They beat Florida State. Virginia beat Providence in that game, 100 and whatever to 90 whatever. And Bryant was going off. And we have dinner that night, and I'm with my high school coach and my mentor, Mr. Fraley. And Coach Holland looks at me, he goes, Douglas, we'd like to offer you a full grant aid to the University of Virginia. So now I have Nebraska, Texas A&M, Arkansas State, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Coach, I'll think about it. And my guys were like, they make fun of me to this day. They're like, you're thinking about what? You're not thinking about shit. So we get home, go. And I go on my visits. I go to Virginia, I visit. Matt Blunden was my host. They were getting ready for Michigan, if you remember. Beat Oklahoma, NCAA tournament.
Oh, Glenn Rice. Glenn Rice.
Oh gosh, Glenn Rice, all of it, Ramil.
Yeah.
But they're getting ready, and they're, you know, I'm there at spring break. It was the most boring visit I've ever had. It was kind of rainy. I think me and Matt went with his girlfriend to watch like Coming to America at the theater or something. And I wasn't like a partier, but you know, Arkansas State visit. Dickie Nutt, the assistant coach, unbelievable guy. They picked me up in my hometown in an airplane, propellers. We go there. Next thing you know, my mom's in town with my brother. I'm like, how'd that happen? We go to a sports store. He's like, no, you put in there and just whatever you guys want, just go grab it. And I'm like, I get a hat or something. And you know, the whole weekend I'm drinking wine coolers at a party, thinking I'm like a big deal. But Virginia was boring. But again, back to my mentor, Mr. Fraley. He's like, hey man, you got a Cadillac, you got a Pinto, you're going to Virginia. I was like, I get it.
Wow.
So the epilogue. I go to Virginia. So Carolina talked to me a lot, but Coach Smith is like, he just comes and tells you you're coming, right? Dean Smith back then. It's not really like we're trying to recruit you unless you're Kenny Anderson. He sent me 2 letters after. Congratulations going to Virginia. Terry Holland's a fine man. You're going to do great there. Da, da, da. If it wasn't for Kenny Harris, you know Kenny from Petersburg. We thought he was a better 2 than you, but you're a better point guard. So we decided to go with him. And Kenny ended up transferring out. He goes, the funniest thing, Coach Smith's like, if you ever need anything, handwritten, if you ever need anything, call me, collect, da, 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 da. And I was like, is that like early transfer portal tampering? If you ever need anything?
Yeah, I guess Wally Walker said it. And that's basically how they ended up getting Charlie Scott. They kept recruiting him from, I guess Davidson had signed him with Lefty Mazel and Terry. And that was the start of the feud that they had. So I guess maybe, I mean, Dean has always seen as a great guy. I'm sure he was. But he was ultra competitive.
He had a funny way about him, man. And he was always great with me. I was lucky, fortunate to be able to play well down, you know, against Carolina. And, you know, he was always very complimentary.
Clemson was very serious about you as well, right? I remember reading that.
Clemson was. Wow, how'd you know that? I didn't even.
I just did my research.
Yeah, no, Clemson was, and they had a coach. His son was the player.
Oh God,
I can't remember his name. And he came to my hometown.
I think it might have been another Bill Foster. It may have been another Bill Foster, but maybe not.
No, I can't. The assistant coach, I can't remember. They love Sean Golden.
Yeah.
Long story short, they passed on me, but they ended up recruiting a kid from the town next to me, Pulaski, Tennessee.
Okay.
The infamous Pulaski for other reasons. This kid Kyle somebody, and he ended up playing at Clemson after because they saw him with me. I don't know what happened with Clemson. I didn't even go on a visit or whatever, but they had some good teams back then.
Yeah. So what did you think about Charlottesville when you started school? So you're an athlete, and at UVA we worship athlete. So you walk around campus, everyone loves you.
Yeah.
It's a really good vibe. So what were your first impressions of Charlottesville and also the university?
First impressions. So we used to work a job in DC for Lakeland Tours. We had Mr. Phil Wendell, great friend of the program, big supporter, helped us get jobs. So we made like $5,000 in the month of June, Julian. That's like in 1990, it's a lot of money. So after the job, we're coming back in July after it's over, and me and John Crotty are driving. You know, Crot's Crot. I just saw him last year, region, all region, everything else, and I'm playing against him. We come over that hill on 29, right? And you see it, and he goes, Dougie Fresh, welcome to your home for the next 4 years, Charlottesville. I was like, all right, that sounds good. First impressions, like school-wise, it was busy. You know, it was exciting. You move in, and let's be honest, there's a lot of like good-looking scenery on move-in day. Everybody's coming back tanned up from their summer, and everybody's excited, and you're making friends. You know, for me, town of 7,000 people, where everywhere I go, every person I see, I've seen before, and I probably know very well. So Virginia was wide open, right? And we had a good things. We're a basketball team together. Coach Holland had us all, the freshmen, the first years, all there early. Spent time with him, and dinners, and the parents and all that. But by the end of the first week, we're like, sorry, Mom, you guys got to go home. We're like, and then going to, like, we had this thing called the Newcomb Hall crawl, and I'll never forget, I met Chris Slade at this thing, just larger than life. And then Kirby was on our team. Terry Kirby played with us. So then getting to know the football players and that. But in terms of Charlottesville, I'll go to Charlottesville right now, and you tell me let's go to the downtown mall, I get lost.
Yeah.
I have the worst sense of direction of anybody I know. But even like back then, trying to get from Rugby back to Tuttle, I didn't know where I was walking. I just tried to find the Dell and get my bearings. So, but it grew on me. I wasn't I don't put it this way. I don't think I would have picked Virginia if I didn't play basketball. But by the end of it, I'm all Virginia. Like, there's nowhere else I wish I had gone. So if that makes sense.
How did you view race relations? Now, from a Black student's point of view, I thought UVA is very segregated at the time. And I was from Northern Virginia, which really wasn't. We saw ourselves as being more progressive. So it was a Southern town to me. But obviously, athletes it's different because it's you guys have a different connection, different vibe.
Yeah.
The first Black basketball player graduated from UVA in 1974, Al Drummond. And
that's amazing. That's so late.
It was only 10 years before I got there, 15 years before you got there. And the first class of women, it was the same year. By the time you were playing, the players in the ACC is a majority Black conference. So the race vibe had changed dramatically, not just in UVA, but nationwide, probably, definitely in the South. How did you view race relations from a guy from small town Tennessee?
Well, see, I'm exactly opposite in a sense of you, because my best friend ended up being my best friend, Chris Havlicek's from Boston. He comes down and he's like, I can't take it down here in the South. It's like nothing I've ever seen. I'm like, dude, this is not the South. I'm from Fayetteville, Tennessee, so I'd seen all that. Like, I was used to, you want to talk about segregation to an extent. Now, the segregation is different than racist, right? I felt like facets of UVA had a little bit of racism in it, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I never had a problem because, I grew up Black, essentially, like, I go to this person, I didn't think of myself either way. I know whatever. I was just always very comfortable. And there's a certain distinction, to your point, of being an athlete. You get a sort of a pass, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But, it's like anything with groups, you got to kind of prove yourself, right? Like, people know, don't know. But it never really hit me until I was at a job. My place I used to work at Susquehanna, and one of the guys played lacrosse goalie back in the day, after us, a little bit after. Somebody asked him, was like, yo, so Matt, what do you think about Virginia? Like, what was it like socially? Where he's like, oh, it was extremely segregated. And I was like, really? Now, he played lacrosse, a white guy. I was like, I never really thought about that. I didn't feel it that way or consider it that way. If Ted Jeffries and those guys on a Friday wanted to go to the student union, what's the
Newcomb,
Black people party?
Newcomb Hall or SAB or
SAB. They went to a party at SAB. We're like, yo, come to Habs fraternities having a party. Like, no, we're going to SAB. We didn't think twice about it. Oh, Ted didn't want to hang out with white guys, or Fresh and Hab don't want to hang out with Black. No. you know, our basketball team, hold on, go all together. You can come say hi. You know, our basketball team, everything together, and the football.
Well, how are you?
Football guys, we were all really close. So I definitely realized there were facets of it. And then when you went into quote unquote townies, it was kind of more so. And I felt that, you know, if I had run into like Little John's, I had an incident one time. There was a table of black dudes, and they weren't students because I would know them. And they basically asked me something off color, and they didn't like the way I responded to it because I told them the truth, and that, you know, you felt a little bit of that. So, but. And, you know, it's like anything, man. Like I went to my high school reunion, Julian. So in Fayetteville, grade school, you look at your yearbook. There's 25 kids, 12 are white, 13 are black, 13 are white, 12 are black. Junior high, same thing. When you go to high school, all the country kids from the county come in, so it's, you know, it's more white, and that's where people start going white black, right? I never did. We never did. We went back. I went to my 25th high school reunion. It was like we were in 5th grade again. Yeah. You know. Nobody cared, like Julian's a black dude that's a lawyer or whatever, or so and so is a maintenance guy, or Rusty's driving his tractor. Nobody cared. We were just all like that. Could you
have dated a black girl in Fayetteville? Would that have been a problem?
Oh yeah. And I did. Mm-hmm.
And it was a problem.
I mean, it wasn't a problem for me.
But generally,
you know, I'm not sure. You know, a lot of people didn't like. I remember a guy a couple years older than me I looked up to, and you know, I was always like I was popular, Julian. Like I'm not, no other way to put it. I was a popular guy up and down, like Mr. LCHS and all these things. This is probably 7th or 8th grade, and somebody a couple years older, probably in high school, he told me, he's like, man, you know, if you date, he's like, he didn't say it to me. He said, any white guy I know that dates a black girl can't be friends with me. Hmm. I'm like, I mean, you're cool, I like you, but what do you want? I knew he was talking to me.
Yeah.
But what happened, Julian, I had a crew, my junior high crew, long story, they're like 3 or 4, 5 white dudes. They all got black girlfriends.
So to get back to UVA and basketball for a minute, you know, I was watching that documentary on ESPN. I'm sure you've seen it, the Bird Magic one.
That's completely my wheelhouse.
That's great. So Cedric Maxwell's talking about the first time he played against Larry Bird, and basically said we didn't think none of the white guys could play on our level. By the time you had joined the ACC, things had changed a little bit. Did you ever feel like being a white guard, a 6'1" guard, that the presumption was against you? You had to always prove yourself, and that
absolutely.
Go ahead.
But that's my whole life, because I always play. You know, you go to a new court and you're the white dude, and it's your whole life. That's what it's like. And you know, people talk about, you know, somebody called me white boy, I don't like it. I'm like, what? That's like every day. Like that makes you better. But yeah, for sure in the ACC, I remember King Rice, a vivid memory. First time I played against him, King Rice had some words for me. You know, and after like 2 or 3 times I'm down the court, I'm like, you're not even that good, man. Like, who are you talking to? Like, I play against John Crotty every day, white point guard. And John, you know, Crotty's way better than you. But yeah, it's 100% that. And why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be? It gives everybody an edge.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. I never liked King Rice that much as a player because I didn't like anyone who played at UNC. And I didn't think he was that great of a player. He wasn't that skilled of a player. He was a good athlete, but he wasn't that skilled of a player. But I really enjoyed his interviews in the ACC tournament special. I didn't know he had that kind of personality because, you know, you learn to hate these players just because they're not UVA. And I really enjoyed his storytelling. I was surprised by that.
Well, I can tell you, the little I know about King, we're not friends. I don't know him personally. It's outside of basketball, but he went through a bunch of stuff, and he essentially grew up, and he's the head coach at Monmouth. Mm-hmm. And he had some bad, you know, things that made him grow up. But he was absolutely that guy at UNC. Like, listen, if I was a point guard at UNC on those teams with 4 pros behind me every day, I would have been a great player, right? I don't think King Rice was great, but that's a different story. But he hide behind that cloak a little bit. But yeah, he's grown up, and I enjoyed that too.
Yeah, I was surprised how funny he was. Well, let's talk a little bit about your transition to the ACC. You and Ted Jeffries come in together. Ted did a PG year at Fort Union to get at least the same age as most freshmen. Obviously, it was an adjustment. You're playing behind John Crotty. You knew that going in, so you knew that it was going to be difficult for you to play a lot unless you could play alongside John. But then you had Bryant, you had Oliver. What was your first year like? What were some of your memories of your first year in the ACC?
It was a little up and down. Like I'd have good games and then I'd have a disaster type thing. But playing with him behind Crotty was a guy. If he was having a party, he was 100% into it. If he's studying, 100% into it. If he's practicing, 100%. And Crotty, like he didn't mess around. And I couldn't admit it to him until 2019 in the Final Four with Kenny Turner. I was like, Crowd, I gotta tell you something. You're the only point guard I ever played with for extended times that I could never mess with. No. And Kenny Turner starts laughing. He goes, Fresh, don't worry about that. Crowd did that to everybody. It's on purpose. Like he does. But the funny thing about Crowd, I also told him, we're playing Clemson at home one time. I come off, get the ball, boom pass, make my first shot, come down, make a stop, make an assist, get a steal. So if I played good, Crotty was coming back in because he didn't want me to play good. But then if I was bad, he was coming in quick anyway. I'm like, I can't win here. Yeah. But you're right. A couple of times I got to play with him, and that was a good experience.
What's funny, me and you used to play pickup together, and you weren't the kind of guy that would deprive a guy his shine. Like if I go out there and play some ball, you had no problem with me having a good game. Yeah. You didn't care. You were out there working on your stuff, and we had some good matchups, but it was never bitter between us. We just played. When I play against John, he wouldn't give me nothing. If I dribbled the ball, he would shoulder me. He didn't even want me to score one bucket. I mean, he's the toughest guy. I've played against some NBA players who would pick up many of them, Othell, lots of guys. John was the toughest guy I've ever played against because he wasn't going to give me anything on the court.
He's 100% into it and locked in, and he sees everything as a personal affront and a battle to him for sure.
Yeah. What about Terry Holland? Now, Terry Holland was a very old school guy, a distinguished guy.
Our class came in. We were all in DC together. I told you, and he drives up to DC, and we're meeting Coach Holland. I'm like, I'm a first year. This might be like every week. I have no idea. He comes in and tells us, guys, this is my last year. I'm done. And so we're like, all right. And he left, and Crotty kind of had a meeting with us, and we have a good team, whatever. But for me, I didn't really know any better. I think some guys felt like, maybe I wouldn't have gone to Virginia, but I came because of Coach Holland. Now he's gone, type thing. But we dealt with it, man. And I'll tell you, the best story about Coach Holland I have. Again, I told you that I was the recruit that I was, not high level, absolutely an afterthought. Virginia, I plugged a need for a backup for Crotty. They didn't see me kind of becoming, I think, as good a player as I became, but whatever. And I was going to sign my national letter of intent, and I'm like, I said, do you think Coach Holland would come? Because I'd see some guys like signing their letter and the coach comes and sees them or whatever. It was a big deal for me. And Coach Holland flew down from Charlottesville to Fayetteville, Tennessee, man, just to be there the day that I signed. He couldn't be in the picture because of NCAA or whatever, but that's kind of the guy he was. He didn't treat, he understood Bryant was a star and Crot, whatever, but he didn't treat anybody differently at all. I never saw favoritism one way or the other, or so-and-so can get away with this or so-and-so cannot, and worked with everybody. I really felt like equally. Now he had starters and he had to win the game, but that's the kind of guy he was to me.
Did you learn a lot from Coach Holland?
I did. I was stubborn, man. Like I told you, June, I was trying to be Sherman Douglas and not Doug Smith. I mean, I'm not gonna I'm serious. Like I liked all this stuff at the point guard. I like the floater. I like, do a 360 and lay it in, this thing, but I'm playing against 7-footers. You can't. He kept telling me, are you getting enough threes up? Are you getting enough threes up? And if I would have come in the shooter that I became, I would have played much more my first 2 years for sure. And I was just too stubborn. I'm like, no, I'm working on my Jason Williams back behind the back pass. I'm not working on my three.
Yeah. Well, take us. I think you heard Jeff tell me the story about how he got the job, but take us through your thought process when they first thought it was going to be Rick Barnes, and then it turns out it's going to be who we call JJ. How did that go down with the players?
Yeah. We didn't know. We knew Rick Barnes was involved. Mike Montgomery, I was excited about because he was Stanford and he recruited me. Mm-hmm. And he was I thought he was a really good guy, like as far as I knew him. And, kind of a Terry Holland-ish guy, maybe a little more fiery. So, but by the end of it, I don't think any of us really wanted anybody from the outside. I definitely did not want Rick Barnes. And there's no reason. Didn't know anything about him back then to think it, but I didn't want him. And then once Coach Jones, it was able to work early because John Crotty, Matt Blunden, Kenny Turner, Dirk Castro, and Bernie Floriani, Bernie passed away, sad. Mm-hmm. Those guys were so mature, man. So that was going to be their fourth year, right? That was their fourth year. And so JJ was like a colleague to them. He wasn't, he didn't have much say over John Crotty, so to speak, as an assistant coach, right? So because those guys were so mature and able to lead, and then of course we had Bryant Stith, so forget it. It was able to make that transition. It's funny to see the guys our age now, the hierarchy. Up until my age, everybody calls him JJ. When you get to Cory, Alexander, Junior Burrow, Chris Aldo, they all call him Coach Jones. Isn't that funny? Because he was just JJ to us, man. Yeah. And so
me too.
We went to the NCAA tournament my first year. We got crushed. Somehow we got BYU in Salt Lake City. Sean Bradley had 25 blocks. Yeah. Mm. And we, altitude, all this stuff. We were flat. We were terrible. That game was so bad, Julian. 4 years later, I'm in New York and I get something sent to my apartment, and I was player of the game that game for Virginia. The Virginia Chevrolet player of the game. I had no idea. It was awful.
That was Jeff Jones's first year, the Sean Bradley.
That was his first year. Yep. Okay. So we went to the tournament his first year.
Okay. So you got a little bit more playing time, and it's John's senior year, so it was a little bit better for you in terms of playing time. But you were going to play more after John graduated. Yeah,
I played more, but my second year, sophomore year. Same thing. I'm playing behind him. Might be 5 minutes, might be 8. Played with him a little, then I broke my foot. Mm-hmm. And so I'm out 5 games. And I'm thinking about redshirting, thinking about I'm like, I want to come back and play. Coach Jones told me, you lost your backup spot to Derek Johnson because you got hurt, whatever. I'm like, okay. So Julian, this is a great lesson for a lot of kids, I think. I went to practice every day like it was the national championship and just worked my ass off. That it stayed ready. Went at everybody and got better because I was treating practice like, not just trying to get through practice, trying to that was my game. And then after practice, I'd go to slaughter, 3 or 4 nights a week. I was just basketball. That year we played at Notre Dame. It was a noon game. Al McGuire doing the game, the whole thing, ABC, and Crotty's he's just not having a good day. And, Crott almost went to Notre Dame and he wanted to play well. And Derek Johnson comes in for him and Derek didn't do good. Long story short, Crotty had gotten in foul trouble, and they just put me in. So I made a couple nice plays at the end of the half. Second half comes around. The last 2 minutes of this game, this is probably well documented. We're down by 7 or so. Bryant Stith scores the last 19 points for us, and it's under 3 minutes. But I'm the point guard at this point, right? So I'm just, what am I doing, Julian? Passing to Bryant and you got to just watch the highlights. It's insane. Just passing it out of the way, literally. We win by 1 or 2. He makes a crazy shot, free throws, all of it. We're done. We run in the locker room. And so this is the time there was a little bit of a Bryant Crotty thing, perceived or real. And Coach Jones was trying to manage it. And so we go in the locker room and Coach Jones is like, fellas, shut up. I want to say one thing. Doug Smith was our MFing MVP today. Yeah. And I go, yeah, Bryant, you didn't do shit.
Yeah. Well,
so that's a good memory.
Wasn't his lesson that, John, if we could just pass the ball to Bryant, maybe we could do something this year?
I think that was the lesson. Yep.
Yeah. So
I think you brought it out of Bryant. He made a great point. I needed Crotty. Crotty needed me.
Yeah. And they both had ambition for the next level. And sure. I think generally they're well intended and that their intention was to be the best player they can be and for UVA to win. And sometimes that would be a little bit of a clash, but anyway.
I mean, it's one of those things when Crott got going, you didn't want him to stop. Crotty had those bursts, man, where he was so good. Anyway.
Wow. Well, going into your senior year, you really had a great year. It was your first year. You averaged more than 20 minutes a game. So yeah. You averaged almost 25 minutes a game. You're getting some serious run. You're still a backup point guard, this time to Cory Alexander.
Yep.
But when you have young point guards, obviously you're going to get a chance to play more because they're going to have situations where they're just learning, they're going to make mistakes. So take us through playing with Cory and then your senior year.
Yeah, that became Cory's an extraordinary talent, and he does not get nearly enough credit outside of the TV stuff for his basketball IQ as a player. And he was just really good. What happened with me and Cory, so we had Jason Williford, who coached Jay Willie now, who's a second year. He got plugged into the starting lineup. I thought I should have been the other starter, but there's no length, right? Then you have Cornell Parker. So there's 3 of them. Cory, Jason, Cornell. I was the first sub off the bench. I could get it any of them. I didn't back up Cory much. I played with Cory, probably 18 of those 25 minutes a game.
Oh, awesome.
And so we interchange, but my whole thing was like, I'm not starting. So if everything's going perfectly, I'm not going in. Not that I didn't want it to go perfectly, but I didn't want it to go perfectly. I wanted to play. But then and what Coach Jones was doing, and it made sense, was like the younger guys, Jason, Junior was a star already, Cory a star already, Yuri Barnes, et cetera. But he was trying to bring them up to get them ready. And by the end of the year, Jason really came on at the end of that, my last year. But like you said, we had fun, man. We went down to Duke. It was the last day of winter break. I remember the students were coming back Sunday night. And so we're down there on a Sunday. And we go in and just it was an absolute blast. We come in at halftime. We never were behind the whole game. I didn't realize that. I found an article. So we come in at halftime and Coach Jones is like, Fresh, what the fuck, what's your effing problem? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, I didn't have any points yet or whatever. I was like, I'm playing bad. He's like, you suck. Like, you get your head in the game. I'm like, dang, I didn't realize it was that bad. Now I'm like, I'm not going to play. And Cory got his third foul or something. I came in, had an and one against Bobby, made a couple threes. I had 14 in the last 12. Was player of the game.
Wow.
And just winning down there, like the young guys, Cory and Jason, especially Jason, they didn't realize how hard it is to win at Duke because they had the right attitude. They're like high-fiving the fans. They're doing the chants with the fans. They're yelling. Like, they had a blast. And we finally, we older guys, me and Ted Jeffries, Havlicek, et cetera, we were able to be like, yeah, let's just enjoy it, man. It felt good to walk out of there.
When you mentioned Cory, Cory was from Waynesboro, so I used to officiate basketball, as you remember. And even from a young age, he had so much poise, so under control, so intelligent. And I was like, this kid is special. He was a small kid. He eventually grew, but he was always like that. I mean, he was very just measured. When you guys played together, who played the point?
Cory, not even a question.
Okay, so
Cory was ball dominant for sure.
And you enjoyed that? You enjoyed playing the two guard with Cory?
I like, what I like? Once, I'm going to tell you something, Julian, you can ask Ted Jeffries, that November, December, and January, I didn't miss a shot. I mean, in practice, I was just, everything for some reason came together. And like my shot, I was shooting from 25, 30. Mm-hmm. Brian Elber used to make fun of me. He's like, good, everything. I just didn't miss any shots. Now, later on in the NCAA tournament, I didn't make any shots. A different story. Yeah. But yeah, Cory, I really got good at moving without the ball. And, 6'1", guy, not 6'6", I could hide. Mm-hmm. And when Cory's let's not say taking the air out of the ball, but he's dribbling a lot, there's gravity to it, and he's he's going to get 20 a game anyway, so he has gravity. People are watching him. I go hide behind Cherokee Parks, then I see Cory sees me, I just break out of the corner. Thomas Hill forgot about me, and I'm open in the corner. That's that's like a layup. So. Yeah. We had some of those. There was a game in Maryland. I was especially upset. I came in the game, Gary Williams, toward the end of the season. He's yelling at Johnny Rhodes, don't let Smith touch it. Just don't let him touch it. Like, that's it. And I'm like, Coach, man, leave me alone. He's 6'6". I'm 6'1". Like, just play the game, man. And so in the beginning it was like that, but then Cory's going off. We're down by one, like a minute left, and Cory's gonna take the shot. Long story short, I tell this story to Cory all the time. He's going to the basket. My guy leaves me. Cornell's guy leaves him. He's 1-on-3. He finally falls down, and the ball leaks out to me in the three. And I catch it. I'm like, oh, hit the three, and we won. That was it. But yeah, I did like playing the two at that point.
Yeah. Well, Doug, you haven't told us any funny Ted Jeffries, Junior Burroughs stories. I mean, I know you talk to these guys a lot, and I know you heard Ted tell a story about Cory Blunt, not Cory Blunt, but the karate man. But I know you have at least one funny TJ Junior Burroughs story for us.
And June is probably I love everybody differently with my teammates and unconditionally and all that stuff, but he's probably my favorite teammate of all time. And he just, some of the things he would say, like in the course of a game, and the way he said it. I remember we're playing Maryland at home, and I think Cory fouled out or something because I was in the game since my junior year with Bryant and everything. And you had to keep Junior focused because he's a junior. And sit down, and Jeff Jones yelling, Junior, get your head in the game. He's like, Coach, and this is like a minute and a half left, and all this, everything's going crazy. He's like, Coach, if my head was any more in the game, it would explode right now. And like just saying that right back to the coach, and it was nonstop. I can't even, TJ. I mean, forever prankster. Messing people. He's got like some of the best quick hitter one-liners that I know. So, and he's so well rounded.
He's just a gifted storyteller. His the way he looks around. He's a brilliant storyteller. So look, you had this really solid fourth year, senior year for those who are not from UVA, and but it had to be a little bit of an empty feeling, only because you only had 1 year to really show your stuff. I mean, you were definitely in the lineup. You played almost every game at UVA, but your senior year, you finally got a chance to play lots of important minutes. When you look back on your career, was there any regret that you didn't go to a mid-major where you could have played a lot more and been probably an undisputed starter, or even a small school where you would have been the man? Or was the UVA experience and all these great guys that your brother's with, was it worth it all?
Oh, absolutely, 100% worth it all. What really got me my first couple of years, and I don't even think about it at all now. But to your point, I go back to Nashville and I'm playing pickup for a couple of weeks at Vanderbilt, and there's some guy I'm just destroying, and he goes to Arkansas State playing 42 minutes a game, not 40. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And he's like the starting guard, and I'm just like, maybe if I went to Vanderbilt, if I went to Carolina. But that was early, and then my junior year I played a bunch. I ended up hurting my knee towards the end of the year, and Cory got much better. So I had some good games and everything, but I think my senior year definitely made it worth it. If my fourth year would have been a repeat of like second or third year, probably not so much. That makes sense, but there's a lesson in it for players, man. That was on me. Everybody thinks about transferring. We all talk, tell your girlfriend, oh, I'm not happy after this game, I'm transferring or whatever. But sticking it out and being there, and especially to this day, being a Wahoo, and that means a lot more than any dwelling on any kind of regrets, right?
Do you think it's too easy to transfer now? Are you glad that you would have had to sit out a year? It was more painful to transfer than it is now. Now you can.
It's too easy. I don't know. Is it fair? I guess coaches can leave for a new job and coach right away. That's the argument. I don't know if it's the right argument. I don't like it, and I don't like it for the kids. Like, we had one transfer out when I played, none in outside of junior college. Yeah. So I liked it the way it was, man. I'm one of my buddies at work makes fun of me. He said I have my life paused on 1987. Like, I like shit the way it used to be. Yeah. The whole kids transfer high schools. They're going to 4 high schools now, 3. Yeah. Like going, the kid from Kaiser that just committed to Maryland, he's going down to IMG or whatever. Like, why? You don't like your homeboys? Like, I don't know. I liked it the way it was, and I don't like it the way it is now. There's no other way to put it.
So funny. Every basketball conversation in Northern Virginia always involves Jamie Kaiser, and I'm so tired of it. I heard he's a great kid. Glad he's going to IMG and have fun. But there's other kids that we could talk about. Well, Doug, this has been great. Give us a little bit of your post UVA journey. You've had a fascinating trek through the world. You've done some great things. Played a little bit overseas. So tell us about some of the things you've done over the last.
Yeah, I was lucky in a way because I was a government foreign affairs major. I mean, I did okay in school, but I didn't have a really good skill. But a great University of Virginia professor, Ed Burton, who was close to a couple of our assistants, Dennis Wolf, he essentially helped me get to quote unquote Wall Street. So my first job was the American Stock Exchange, making nothing as what's called a clerk. And, kind of like I don't like saying blessed. I don't like saying lucky, but I've been very fortunate that I've always been around good people. Mm-hmm. My high school basketball coach, my family, obviously, Coach Holland, Coach Jones, and then my bosses. I'm on the American Stock Exchange. There's a lot of bad people. Mm. I didn't realize it, but I worked for great people. Vincent Shanley, Arthur Palladino really helped me. And, I kind of grew up in the business. Fast forward 9.5 years in, I became a trader. And my 2 oldest sons were born. This is 2002, 2003-ish. And ex-wife Brazilian decided to move to Brazil. There was a place, Salvador Bahia, in the northeast of Brazil. Always wanted to live there. I was 32 years old. I could do it for maybe a year, I figured, and then, figure life out, figure out how to get a job, which never happened. Long story short, we got separated, got divorced, and that turned into 4 years. But the coolest thing in Bahia is randomly saw a gym one day. I walk in the gym, basketball court, because I played soccer, which I could run and all that, but I was terrible. And I go in the gym, and there's this niche of basketball in the state of Bahia. So I play for the Salvador team, and we're traveling all over the state, Northeast and everything. 32, 33 years old at the time. And it came back. Like, I was the leading scorer in the league my first year and got a name. And we have, a lot of stories that I can't tell here that I should probably write a book about.
It is Brazil. Yeah.
Well, I'm playing with 20-year-old dudes, and we're going to a tournament up here and staying in a hotel. And our coach is, we were paid in beer after the, post game. So it was wild. But maybe, again, a lot of good friends from that, man. Came back, and as you know, started working again. I have 7-year-old twins, as you know, and my oldest graduated college, played soccer at NJIT. The other one just graduated high school, 19. So, it's full, it's busy. It's a lot of kids. A reset on life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your son was a really good soccer player. I've seen photos of him. And what do as a athlete, you as a father, when you think about raising your son and trying to help him reach his goals, what are some of the things that athletes do right and do wrong? I mean, why was your son successful in soccer? And do you have regrets in the way you raised him as an athlete?
No, the only kind of regret is I moved back here to New York, and they were still in Brazil, so they're back and forth, the month of July and then Christmas time. So I wasn't there day to day, but I was really lucky in the sense that my dad, the best gift he gave me was confidence. Like, I'm not really sure how you can do that. I hear people talk about, oh, my daughter, she struggles with this, and I always had confidence, and that's because of my dad. He gave me skills and said, use them, so to speak. So I think I did the same for my son, especially the older one, but he succeeded because of him. Like, he moved here from Brazil in 8th grade. All he did was go out and play soccer, look for, pick up. How about that, Julian? What about that novelty word? Pick up.
Exactly.
Didn't want me involved. We found a club team, all Latino kids from El Salvador and, first generation kids, good kids. They played very creatively. He's very, very Brazilian on the pitch, as they say. Mm-hmm. Tries to make the perfect plays. Got his skills are nice. And college soccer wasn't the best thing, but it's because of them. And if I give advice, you spend a lot of time with them when they're little. And then if you see a kid click, every kid's different, right? Some are driven like I was, like he was. Some less so. But at some point, it's their thing. It's not mine, right? Like, soccer's his game. It's not my game. And I learned very young. I used to take him to Virginia to the soccer camp. Matt Chulis and those guys, and Coach Gavilna. And I was that dad on the side, like, yelling at them. And they were like, stop. That's not how it works. I'm like, shit, okay, I guess not. I wasn't yelling at them, but you know what I mean. I was being vocal from the sidelines, let's say. So I go to the games, I sit there and I watch. It's their thing. And when I see things, different things, I'll spend time with them on it. But it's got to be theirs.
Yeah. Well, Doug, this is great, man. I've really enjoyed reconnecting with you. I've really enjoyed your work on Locker Room Access. I would implore everyone to give it a shot, especially during the season. It's a lot of fun because you guys are really passionate about the Who's, as you should be. But I love to at some point get you and some of your teammates on again, and we can maybe talk about some more of the old games if you guys get a chance. And I know you got your own.
You can get at least 3 different versions of the same story from our guys. That's pretty cool.
All over.
Yeah, I appreciate the coolest. I'm sure you've had the same thing. The coolest thing about Locker Room Access for me is the connections that it's kind of made. So I've gotten to be close with guys that played in the 70s. For example, you're talking about the guy that 1972, the first black guy. I'd never met him, but I know guys that play with him. They talk about it. Dr. Paul Gabriel has been a huge supporter. A guy named Bob Sefcik, and of course Wally and the legend Barry as well. Those guys, but just random people and they found it through Locker Room Access, and we become, we already have the bond, right? We're Wahoos, we're Who's, but then we become like genuine friends. And I'm sure you've had a bunch of that stuff too, because you've had such unbelievable different kind of guests on. I had the Virginia quarterback recently from back in the day.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks.
Anything about him.
It's been really great because I started Nova Legends just during the pandemic because there's time on our hands, and I got to connect with so many awesome athletes from the area, and, including Grant and Tommy, but so many others that, not on their level. And we all became connected through these Facebook groups, and also in some regard to the podcast. But it's been amazing doing that. And it's funny. I don't want to say it's put me in a position of power, because that wasn't the intent, but it's just so funny how much people appreciate, the ability to connect people again, and to make these games relevant, and a lot of the person. See, one thing, people know who you are, people know who the UVA players are, but these random high school players that played in the 1970s, for people to talk about these games again, it means a lot to people, because a lot of these memories are just forgotten. So it has been a lot of fun to do that.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely same thing in my hometown. We talk about games in 1982 state championship in football, they won in those things. But you're right. Like, my whole thing on locker room access, I'm just trying to make Chris Havlicek laugh and say some smart things along the way. So that's my whole goal. But it's funny, because you are right. It's in a certain sense, it's a little bit of a leadership role. Maybe it's because you're talking. People think you're like, and you get people watching a little bit and commenting. It's fun, man. It's good. And it keeps you sharp too, right? Like I try to say some smart things, and I try to look at different things during a basketball game than the obvious 11 points, 10 assists, whatever. So
yours requires more skill, because when you have partners, it's the timing is a lot more challenging, a lot more complicated. When you're by yourself, we're all really used to having conversations by ourselves. So it's more, let the person tell their story. But when you're with other people, you got to share the mic. It is challenging sometimes. It is
challenging. I pride myself too. I never prepare for anything. Like I don't have a set agenda or whatever. So I just try to be imaginative, I guess, so to speak, when I'm coming back and dealing with those guys. But Mark Jerome keeps us in line a little bit.
Yeah, but you got to have a straight man always. So
sure.
But, well, Doug, man, this is great, man. Let's keep in touch, and let's definitely
get some of your.
Yeah, let's get some of your partners in crime on a podcast in the future.
All right, that'd be awesome. And tell me what you need, man. I can try to make it happen.
Sounds good, man. I appreciate it, Doug. Thanks for your time.
All right, thanks,
All
guys.
right, man. Take care. Anyway,